call the regular meeting for the Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for Tuesday, November 24th to order. Good evening, committee members. And we only have one item on the agenda this evening, and we're going to turn it over to John Joyner to summarize it, and then we'll see if there's any questions.
Thank you. As you mentioned, we have only one item tonight, and that item is concerning an amendment to the current year Transportation Improvement Program. And that is to allow SciRide to apply for a COVID-19 research demonstration grant that will allow them to incorporate automatic passenger counters in their buses.
Maybe just for the public, John, if you want to just highlight what the benefit of that is.
Sure. That helps potential passengers look at the level of fullness for the buses that the routes and the buses that they want to take, so they can plan ahead on their trips. And the reason that's COVID-19 research is they're trying to spread out the load of passengers and maybe pick a later bus that won't be as crowded.
I just mentioned too is that when I was on transit board, that was something we considered, and it was just very expensive to implement. And one of the, I think, Tim, maybe you were on the board at that time too. And the benefit is that as we do studies and ridership, especially if we're going to see changes in ridership occurring, it gives us real-time data to analyze versus paying someone to ride each bus and count the riders. So it's going to be a tremendous tool for SciRide, especially as we're moving forward. So. Okay, any questions for staff on the item before us this evening? If not, I would entertain a motion to set the date for public hearing for January 12th, 2021 on this particular item.
So moved.
Betcher?
Second.
Junk seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Anything else you need from us tonight, John, on this particular item?
No, thank you.
All right. We'll now open up for any policy committee comments. We'll start with Mr. Zill. Bill, any comments tonight?
No comments from the west side today. So.
All right. Thank you for attending. Appreciate it. Gloria?
Yep.
Nothing tonight.
Tim? Nothing. Rachel?
No.
Amber?
No.
David?
Nothing here.
Bronwyn?
Nope. Nothing.
Very good. Thank you. We will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Zinnel. We are adjourned. Thank you all. We'll go ahead and move into our council meeting here just in 1 second.
Have a good Thanksgiving, John.
Thank you. You too, Bill. Thanks for coming. All right, we're going to call the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, November 24th, 2020 to order. Good evening, council. And just want to bring to the public's attention that due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic, the council meeting will continue to be conducted as electronic meeting. And those who may be interested in attending can access the Zoom link, the telephone number on the city's website, and there's a toll-free number if you want to call in. Also, you can view the meeting on YouTube, our cityofames.org channel 12, or watch it on Mediacom channel 12. Council night, we're working from an amended agenda. The first item was that on number 7, the establishment did pass inspection. The original agenda said subject to inspection. And secondly, under item 35B, the date should be 2024 in lieu of the date that was included in the initial agenda. And also, as we move forward through these items, just for information, staff has pulled item 31, which is a resolution approving downtown facade grant. And also they pulled the resolution under 34B, and I'll discuss that in brief when we get to that item. So moving on to consent, does council, I'm sorry, my apologies. First thing is we got a proclamation to read. As everyone knows, Saturday is Small Business Saturday. It's important for our local community, and I'm pleased to make this proclamation, Small Business Saturday. So I'll proceed in reading it and present it to John Hall with Ames Main Street. Whereas the city of Ames celebrates our local small businesses and the contribution they make to our local economy and community, and whereas 90% of consumers in the United States say Small Business Saturday has had a positive impact on their community, and whereas the city of Ames supports our local small businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has been especially hard on local businesses, and the city of Ames encourages consumers to support small businesses, and whereas advocacy groups and public and private organizations in the state of Iowa and across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday, therefore I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the city of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Saturday, November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday in Ames, and ask that residents of our community support our local small businesses and merchants on that day and throughout the year with their patronage. John, we'll get the original to you, and you're welcome to make a few comments if you'd like.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, and thank you for that proclamation. And, I submitted it on behalf of Ames Main Street, but really the proclamation speaks broader than just that organization. So really the Ames Chamber, all of our affiliate programs, whether it be the Farmers Market, Ames Main Street, Campus Town Action Association, we all appreciate the small businesses that exist here in our community, and we appreciate your guys' continued support of those small businesses. And we just want to continue to reiterate, shop small, shop local this holiday season. Many of our retailers throughout the community have found new ways to provide online services or the ability to purchase online. So for those that aren't comfortable getting out, we certainly understand and appreciate anything you can do to continue to support local. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, John. Appreciate your attending tonight. All right. Now I'll move on to consent. Council, does anyone want to pull any item from consent this evening? Hearing none, I entertain a motion approving consent as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Garten and Betcher, thank you. Roll call, please.
Betcher,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Dee Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to public forum. This is a time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Council will not take any action on any comments offered. And so we'll open up public forum, and let's see, Brian, would you want to explain how people can access public forum either via Zoom or by telephone?
Certainly. Anybody wishing to speak at this time or regarding other topics during the meeting can indicate so by hitting the raise hand button located on the center bottom portion of your screen if you're joining us by video. If you're joining us by phone, you can press *9, and that will give us the same indication that you have raised your hand. So we have a hand raised from Merlin Fonkook. I will allow you to speak, and you can unmute yourself, Merlin, and begin your, state your name and address and begin your comments.
I'm Merlin Fonkook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I'm not sure whether I should be allowed to say this at this time. I have some comments on the East Industrial area but they do not pertain whatsoever to the rezoning consideration that's on the agenda. So I'm wondering if I can speak at this time or
Yes.
whether I have to
Yes.
wait.
No, go ahead, Merlin, go ahead.
I've been asking for some time for more transparency on this project. I would like to see some sort of community discussion on this before we spend maybe $6 or $7 million of our money on this. From the start, this project has been treated as though, to me at least, it's the AEDC and the council are insiders on this, and we're supposed to trust you that you are doing a good job here, watching out for taxpayers. You approved it almost 6 years ago, the funding for this, and it's 6 years later, and yet there's no company that has announced any plans publicly to build out there. And now you're proposing to lay the infrastructure all the way to Verbial plant. When this started, I believe you thought maybe there would be some more spin-offs related to what at that point was the DuPont plant. Well, that hasn't materialized, and the cellulosic ethanol is kind of went in the garbage can. It just seems to me that the public should have more assurance that this is a good investment before you spend this amount of money on it. I know that you've already spent maybe $1 million or more on engineering for this project, but now we have a pandemic. Maybe in a few months it will be clearer the direction this is going to go. Maybe there will be a vaccine, but how fast the economy may recover in any case is still uncertain. There are numerous communities in Iowa that are trying to attract business and industry by getting community ready to build infrastructure. A few of them have been successful. Most of them are still hoping they'll be successful. I don't see any great demand for building industry in Iowa or anywhere in the US. Industry, a lot of it has gone overseas, as you well know. So I guess I'd like to know who is chomping at the bit to build here. I maintain that if a company really wants to come here, it ought to be willing to say so publicly, so we have some assurance that this is just not that this is a worthwhile endeavor. We've not always been successful as a community with industry. I guess I would just like to see maybe a special meeting on this where we can talk about this as a community rather than this just being an insider's game. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Merlin. There may be some additional conversation from people during the zoning discussion that may shed light on that as well too. So anyway, anything else, Brian? Anyone else?
Mayor, I do not see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and close public forum. Moving on to item 29, request for city to purchase Rose Prairie property. And we'll do is go ahead and have staff do a summation, some conversation, and then I'm sure there'll probably be people who may wish to address council on this item after the conversation. Steve?
Yeah, well, we did supply a report. Actually, it's a follow-up to the report that you asked be placed on the agenda. It's divided into 3 different categories. I know an important issue is water quality in the area, the possibility of developing a park in that area, a community park, and also the development impacts and how it impacts our long-range plan, our 2040 plan. So I don't know if you want us to go through it or summarize it, or you're ready to ask questions. The 3 authors of each section are here. We could go down through water quality first, maybe companion issue is the development impacts, and then the park is the last one if you'd like, or we can summarize it for you. We're ready to do whatever you want to. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, so I don't want to take the council's time if you've already read it and you understand our position, but you can certainly, we can do that or start answering questions.
I think it might be helpful if we could just maybe give a high level 2-minute, summary and maybe talking about some of the concerns or some of the things contained in the report versus going through it in great detail. Then we can get some questions from council.
Okay, well, we could start off with John Dunn and talk about water quality.
So, good evening, Mayor and Council. The modeling that we did was really intended to look at a couple of different alternatives. First, it was looking at what the nutrient loading coming off the watershed as it exists currently would be today. And then we looked at what would the loading be if Rose Prairie developed under a concept similar to what's been presented, knowing that that's still a little bit in flux, but based on what we understood, we modeled what we thought the nutrient export would be. And then we also took a look at what would be the potential if the entire property were somehow retired, whether it was put into wetlands or prairie grasses or something of that nature. And what we found was that the original design capacity of the North Wetland Complex was the design capacity mirrors very closely to what we're estimating the nutrient export would be from Rose Prairie if it develops as it was envisioned. Is there some additional nutrient reduction that you could get if you fully retired the property? Our modeling suggests, yes, there is probably some. When we're talking though that the nutrient protection that's already there covers between 75 and 90 or 95%, depending on which pollutants you look at already. It does kind of beg the question, is it a diminishing return? Is the dollar amount for getting that last final pound of nutrient, is it going to be worth it? And our conclusion that we reached with the modeling, and Ashley's on here if you've got questions specifically about how the modeling work was done, but our conclusion is that the existing wetlands are adequately protective of the lakes at Ada Hayden if the Rose Prairie Complex develops as it was originally envisioned.
Okay, you want us to go on to the second one? I think companion issue is, Kelly, why don't you talk about the effects on development in our plans?
Certainly. So Rose Prairie was included as part of the North Growth Tier 1 area as part of that evaluation in the scenarios for Ames Plan 2040. So at that time, we moved forward assuming that build out would occur in that Hyde Avenue area. And it's really our best near-term lands. It's this property, the build out of Corey Estates, and then to the south is a large Hunziker company's owned property too. So those are the most developable, readily developable lands that we identified with Ames Plan 2040. So in the west and the south, where our other Tier 1 and Tier 2 areas are that we prioritized as our expansion areas, the east was also included, but that's a little bit more far off. There isn't as much readily available land there. There's land that needs to be developed, so some extensions of infrastructure would be necessary. It would be mostly focused on water and sewer, probably not road improvements right away. And we identified there's, without exactly knowing which properties are interested in annexing and developing, that somewhere between a $2.5 to $6 million kind of capital improvement program would need to be set forth in the budget in the next couple of years to try and make up for the absence of this land for development. And we've also been in contact with the Rose Prairie Development Group. they had contacted us earlier this summer. Although they've been silent for almost 2 years now after some issues they had with the assessments and the connection fees on financing the project, they do plan to come forward and ask the city council to look at some updates to their master plan and to look at some other amendments that they think would make the project financially feasible and hopefully be able to move forward in 2021 with housing production.
Kelly, before you go any further, you could just clarify, you talk about potential changes to the master plan. Does that have anything to do with the overlay, conservation overlay, or affecting the calculations that John and Ashley went through?
In terms of footprint of development, what they're trying to do is work within the housing units they've already been entitled with and rearrange them to be a little bit more of an efficient layout. So there's still have to meet the conservation subdivision ordinance. There's still going to be a lot of green space in the project that would meet both our Chapter 5B stormwater standards as well as the conservation ordinance. So I think what John had as a modeling, whether or not that's their exact stormwater strategy to have a large pond in the middle of the property, I think that's left open right now. I think they're revisiting some of their design choices previously, but I don't have an updated concept to share with you quite yet. I think it's coming here probably in the next month.
Okay, Steve, who's next?
With Keith, he'll talk about possibility of a park, a community park.
You're muted, Keith.
Okay. So currently in our park master plan, we do not have anything identified in the north area for either a community park or a regional park. But however, in the Ames 2040 plan, in the information that was reviewed with council at the May 19th meeting or workshop, we did talk about that in each of these growth areas to the north, to the west, and to the south, that a community park should be added. Community park is roughly 40 to 60 acre park, has a service area of 1 to 2 miles, and has amenities, that would service the entire community, such as ball diamonds, tennis courts, some other things such as that. So with the 2040 plan, a community park could be added to the north growth area. This would be a possibility, for that. I'm not going to go through all the other information, that shared in the staff report, but it is a potential if, council were to do something, with this land, even if they looked at the entire 170 acres, we do believe that the community park should be part of that if they go that route. But again, there's nothing in our current plan to add 170 acres, which what we would consider a regional park in addition to, Ada Hayden.
Okay. Any other staff comments, Steve?
Just so you remember that if we moved ahead with a park, it would require probably a bond issue if we're talking about the purchase price. If there's a willing seller and there's a purchase price plus the development of the park itself.
Okay. Questions for staff?
I have a couple of questions, and I don't know whether we know the answers to these. John, I'm wondering, how often have we had to access Ada Hayden as our backup water supply in your time?
Yeah, we've used that as a backup where we've actually pumped from the lakes into the river on, I believe, 2 occasions. So it really is for an exceptional drought situation that we use it.
John, can you also explain that you're not taking water out of the river, right? Explain what you're doing when you're pumping water from the lake to the river.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're moving water from the lakes at the park into the river, and then that water ponds and pools behind the Lowhead Dam in North River Valley Park. That area has been identified as a primary recharge zone for the downtown wells. And so that water then percolates down into the aquifer formation, and we're actually pulling it out of the ground through our wells just like we normally would.
And then I have a question for Kelly. Again, I don't know if this is something that we have an answer to or not. So Rose Prairie has been sort of under development for quite a few years. I don't remember exactly when this all started. I mean, it's before my time on council. Maybe it's at the beginning of the staff report. Do we know how much of a role our current, the infrastructure costs that have already been put into this area have impacted the ability or lack of ability for developers to see it as a feasible development?
Well, before 2015, when the city put the street in and extended water and sewer, it was completely infeasible. So really the land's been able to be developed for about 5 years because it took the city programming that project and completing it before it could really be built out. With that, we set certain development fees to recoup our costs related to the street paving as well as water and sewer connection fees. And in our conversations with them, I think why it hasn't moved forward, some of the timing of how those fees were adopted really front loaded the costs. And they've been working to try and find a method to spread those costs so they could move ahead in a first phase without having to pay it all up front. I think the other issue is with the conservation subdivision. We all know there's a lot of water that goes through the property. And it makes it unique in how they have to kind of do the street patterns and what kind of level of efficiency you get by having to go around some of these natural areas and have a less efficient pattern that you see in many other areas of the city. So I think the first one is getting over the hump on the first phase, not having to have the front loaded costs be spread onto the first phase. And then there are some logistical issues about the overall cost for the layout of the site.
And one of the options here is to pursue that, possibly pursue the 40 to 60 acre park. Does that complicate things a lot more for the developers as far as you know with what they're already trying to accomplish?
So they're aware that this request came in, but I have not gone through alternatives with the developer trying to speculate on where this might go through council's review tonight. So it's hard for me to kind of say where would 40 acres fit. I think it would require adjustments to the idea of this north-south spine road and its location, because there's not just a kind of large contiguous 40 acre piece that would make just complete sense to be set aside and say that's a community park. So I think there would have to be adjustments to the layout to include it.
Anything else, Gloria?
No, that's all I've got.
Okay. Other questions for staff?
A few. Steve, let me start with you. So is there a way for us to approximate the difference in terms of the tax revenues if we take the land, instead of having it developed into residential properties and take it off the tax rolls? Is there a way to estimate the fiscal impact of that?
Well, I'd have to see the overall development, and you make some averages of what an average home would be, priced home would be, how many of those types are going to be in the development, how many apartments, they're going to be, how many buildings are going to be, and try to anticipate that. I don't know if there's square footage of the commercial area. It'd be all speculative, but you're going from zero to a lot of money if that's what you want to know.
Well, it seems like this would be a variable that we want to understand the fiscal impact. So when we look at the cost of this, we're looking not just at the upfront cost of purchasing the land and the other development costs of making this a usable park, but also the lost revenue, that's also part of the equation. And so if we went forward on this, is it possible that Dwayne or his staff could provide the council with a rough approximation on the lost revenues? Again, having to make some presumptions.
We could try to do that. Again, I don't know if I would rely on it. Again, it's easy to know that if you develop it as a wetland in a park, you have zero revenue versus a substantial amount of subdivision.
And then Kelly, a question for you. We haven't asked you, we've done so much work on the 2040 plan based on certain presumptions with respect to availability of land. The staff report indicates that possibly 620 units, is that correct, of possible residential units?
That's the max that's allowed under the zoning.
So if we work with that as a number, or 600, if we were to ask you to go back and recalibrate the 2040 plan and we wouldn't have that many housing units, how would you begin to think about making the 2040 plan work to accommodate the loss of housing that this property would provide?
So we talked about that internally when we put this together, and I don't think you have to calibrate Plan 2040, because we had a margin to address over 15,000 people being added to the city over the next 20 years. What it does is it makes us refocus into those identified growth areas and move forward now rather than later to have available land. So it doesn't change the 20-year horizon, it changes that 3 to 5 year horizon.
And could you speak to the issue of infrastructure? Gloria raised this, and I thought that was a good issue. If we were to push development out further, I know this is very speculative, but how would we think about the impacts for the taxpayer in terms of the cost of adding that additional infrastructure?
That's partially a strategy question that the council would have to grapple with. If you follow the model that we put out here, we did expect development to carry most of those costs through connection fees and assessments. The city did pay for, Steve might have to correct me, but for about a quarter of the street paving costs. So what we identified in Plan 2040 is that certain parts of trunk line extensions and oversizing of water mains and road widenings would probably be a city cost, but there's also costs that we think would go back to a developer. So one thing that's very common in the Plan 2040 scenarios was a trunk line sewer extensions needed almost everywhere. So that's likely a city cost principally to do the first day to make the land usable. And then from there, how do water extensions work logically? And maybe as the developer goes, those are questions that we get answered as we annex land. But it's probably the sewer is the one that the city would be looked at to pay for first and upfront.
Okay. And then Keith, one question. I know this is off the top of your head, but do you happen to know the approximate number of acres in the Ada Hayden Park system as it stands today?
Yeah, there's 437 acres at Ada Hayden. 130 of it is the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question for maybe Keith and Steve, or one of them. The staff report, seems to focus on if this is something if we wanted to do this, that this would be a community park that would include several different amenities, including, athletic fields and that sort of thing. That, and maybe I know what you're going to say, but is that the intent, if we were to move forward with this, is that would be used for a variety of community activities and amenities?
Yeah, the community park, has some of those amenities, and we just used the ball diamonds, for example.
Right.
And one of the things that we've been trying to look at is can we move things out of the floodplain, which our current 6 ball diamonds in River Valley Park are in the floodplain, and obviously every time it floods, there's fence damage, there's infield mix replacement, and so on. So what we were discussing, if we took the ball diamonds, put them up here in a corner of the park, and then what we would do is we would remove the ball diamonds at River Valley and repurpose River Valley into something different, flat space. There could be other amenities that are better suited for the floodplain. So those were just some ideas that we talked about when we have these opportunities, and obviously before development starts, to be able to put such as athletic field ball diamonds up there with lights before a lot of houses go in, would be a good thing. So again, this was just trying to take a look at that 170 acres, the appendix the attachment that we have with some of the different things. Be 3 miles of trails, there'd be a road to get access to some of these amenities, but try to spread them out and try to look at complementing the prairie restoration, the wetlands, and really try to look at it more almost as in a way a county park where things aren't real close, like where you're at Brookside. And you can see all 3 shelters, the playgrounds, everything's really compact. What we look here is try to spread it out a little bit more, and kind of a combination of the conservation items plus some other amenities. So does that answer your question?
Would that still hold true if we were to pursue even the smaller 40 or 50 acre option?
Yeah, if we were to do 40 or 50 acres for a community park, some of that could go there, but probably not all of it.
Right.
We wouldn't do probably 3 shelters and 4 playgrounds. We'd scale back on some of those items.
Right, but there would still be an intent to try and put, different uses and different amenities in that.
Correct.
Smaller portion too.
It's obvious you don't build a community park every day, right? So
correct. That's why I'm asked. Right.
Your next one, the policy decision for the council will be: is this the correct spot for it?
Correct. That's where I'm going. Okay. Thanks.
Do you want to move all those people up to the north end, or is there a better location to serve the total population for this type of park?
Okay.
That's what you'll have to decide.
Keith, how big is River Valley right now for the softball complexes?
Just the softball complex area, the 4 diamonds, the parking, so on, probably about 14, 15 acres if you had some green space in there.
Other questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and open up public input. And first of all, council has received many emails from individuals who are passionate, like I'm sure council is passionate about Ada Hayden, and we appreciate the fact that people took time to explain and share their views. Some sent some significant links and research to help explain their position. And while it's sometimes challenging to respond to every email, I can assure you the council does receive those and read them. So it's not necessary to go through and present all the same things that are contained in the emails. Secondly, anticipating we may have a number of people interested in addressing council, we are going to ask people to adhere to a 3-minute or less time limit. And so Brian, we'll go ahead and open up public input on this item. And again, as you have mentioned, each person will need to introduce themselves and address, and then their 3 minutes will begin.
The first speaker is James Pease. You may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to talk with you tonight. And I want to thank the council for considering our request. I'm James Pease. I'm president of the Friends of Ada Hayden Heritage Park. I'm at 3840 Stagecoach Road, just about a mile east of the park. I also want to thank both Keith and John and Ashley for meeting with me and going over some of the modeling that they've done in their staff report. The reason we've brought this to the council at this time, we know it's very, very difficult to, when you have competing land issues or competing interests in land use, difficult for council to weigh all that in the balance. But in our view, it's in the best interest of the city and the long-term interest of the city to consider our request. There were three reasons, primary reasons that I put forth in my long email to you, my report to you, our response to the staff report. Certainly the first was the human need for parks, and I don't have to tell you, if you've been to any parks in the last 8, 9, 10 months, be they city parks or county parks or state parks, you know how people have returned to nature to seek that sort of balance in their lives, that sense of peace, a chance to renew themselves. The biodiversity is the second reason, and as we humans expand our footprint on the landscape, other species tend to suffer. The staff report didn't attempt to even deal with that, and I understand that, but it's certainly something that is really critical as a human population of Ames increases. We need to think about that. The other species with whom we share this planet. And thirdly, of course, was lake protection. And this land, as I showed you in the Appendix A of my report to you, is the most highly erodible land in the Ada Hayden watershed. The most highly erodible land is in the Rose Prairie subdivision. Drainage also from that land will not only include the nutrients, which the models try to deal with, but also includes other things like heavy metals and hydrocarbons and plastics, all those things that come off of an urban landscape and impermeable surfaces that don't come off of the ag landscape. We agree generally that well thought out housing is mostly better than the current ag production, certainly the ag practices that are in place there. But the best is still, as the staff report pointed out, some sort of permanent vegetation to remove any nutrients and expand or extend, rather, I should say, the ability of the wetlands to do their job. Modeling is, you might understand, is what we think will happen based on the best data that we have now. It does not account for all of the impacts, but it's the theoretical impacts. And will the wetlands handle that? We certainly hope so. The model says it will, or they will, but we don't know that with absolute certainty. Lastly, I just want to say, in addition to what's in my report, the developer, which is now, I will remind you, the third one now, has, as Steve Schenker has indicated, they now have recontacted with an interest in moving forward, and I'm certain that they're doing so with a caveat, as was pointed out. No doubt they'll try to leverage more concessions from the city, perhaps the conservation overlay and some things that I certainly urge you, no matter, should you permit that development to go ahead, I really want to urge you to not give in, to hang in there and say no to attempts to weaken the protections for the lake. I think our future and the future of that park and the clean water that is really sort of the gem of the parks in the city is really, I think, is what at stake here. And I don't think future generations will forgive us if we screw it up. So let's try to make sure that we protect that. And that includes two of the things I mentioned in my note to you was the need for some sort of continuous sampling, and John pointed out that there had been some sampling done there, and particularly 2017 and 2018 by the State Hygienic Lab. Good sampling, but it's only 2 years, and we'd like to see a more continuous. And I detailed in my remarks to you a way of doing that to engage the citizenry in this as well. And then lastly, I just want to say the gas station there in that watershed, just as the staff report indicates, might not be a good idea. And I think it's definitely not a good idea, and we ought to X that out of the any development plans as well. To put that station, which gas stations almost perennially leak eventually, to put that in the Ames in the Ada Hayden watershed would just be an error. So thanks very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you don't understand anything about how nutrients move through the watershed or anything, be glad to talk about that.
Thank you, Jim, for your comments. And I did offer some forbearance and allowed you a lot longer time to speak, partly because of your leadership for the Ames, the Friends of Ada Hayden, and appreciate for the fact that you put a lot of time into this, and your explanation, I think, was very helpful. So thank you very much for addressing council. Brian, anybody else?
The next speaker is Wendy White.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can. And if you could try and limit your comments to 3.5 minutes, that'd be helpful. Dr. White.
Okay, thank you. I reside at 3702 Ashton Drive in Ames, and I'm here to advocate that the land should be purchased and placed into permanent wetlands. The council has a once and forever opportunity to make a difference of historical importance in preserving the pristine nature of Ada Hayden. The extraordinary nature of Ada Hayden relates to the opportunity to experience wildlife and native prairie savanna on a daily basis within the Ames city limits. What a treasure and tribute to the Ames commitment to a sustainable future. In addition to concerns regarding the harms to the water quality and the wildlife, I am equally concerned about the damage to the pristine aesthetics of the park in terms of destroying the sweeping prairie views. So you have a priceless treasure that should not be traded for another nondescript residential development or manicured baseball diamond. And in terms of considering the lost revenue calculations, please consider the lost revenue due to diminishing the appeal of a major regional attraction.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Very much appreciate your comments.
The next speaker is Irv Klaas.
Good evening, Irv.
Thank you. I'd like to take a few minutes to educate Gloria on the history of Rose Prairie and the park. I've been involved with this ever since the beginning. 1999, when the Hubble development proposed to build a huge housing development around what is now the Lakes Park. We opposed that, and we convinced City Council at the time that it was not. Then we had to raise the money to develop it and to buy the land. And the city applied for a grant from what was then called the Vision Iowa program, and they got $1.5 million. And we had a bond issue. And Mayor Tedesco asked me to co-chair the bond issue campaign, which I was glad to do. And it passed with $5 million and with 86% of the vote, because the people recognized that this was an important piece of ground to get and not develop. And then along came the proposal to, well, first of all, I was a Soil and Water District Commissioner by that time, and I applied for money from the DNR under the 318 program to study that watershed and how we could do it and protect the park. And it was about $250,000 in that grant. And when we went to look at the land and propose what could be done, we found that that property that's now called Rose Prairie was a deeply gouged out area due to glacial action years and years ago, many thousands of years ago. And it was marginal land for development or for agriculture, either one. And of course, everybody wants to do whatever they can with this ground. And so we had the money left over from the project, the watershed project, and we hired a man by the name of Steve Applebaum from, he has a business called Applied Ecological Services in southern Wisconsin. And he was the designer of a low impact development in the Chicago area that was very successful. And eventually he was hired to do prairie trails in Ankeny, which is I think 1,000-acre development in the new city of Ankeny, which they've really been a beautiful area that they've developed. And in that, they've developed very prominent stormwater practices that would not only protect land downstream, but also within the development. So we hired Steve to come in and meet with a group of developers. We had the city planner at that time. We had the developer from Friedrich, and Bob Friedrich Jr., who was director of their development program at that time, also attended. And we had a developer from planner from Hunsiker. And I can't remember everybody that attended, but we had it at the Somerset Village Clubhouse. And we worked all day. And Applebaum had software material on a computer that he brought along. And we planned out a low impact development for what is now Rose Prairie that called for a maximum, not a minimum, a maximum, 270 homes on small lots with about 40% of the land set aside to infiltrate water and filter the water before it went into the park. That development, that concept or that plan we developed was presented to the owner at that time was Eb Cochran. He said he was not interested. So it sat on somebody's desk for a while. And then I heard about a project that was being proposed at the county level. And this property was that time was still in the county. It was not in the city. So I heard about this and I went to the planning and zoning meeting in Story County. And here was the developer presenting a development plan for what he called, and that was the first time it was named, Rose Prairie. Well, that development, I looked at it and I said, I've seen this before. Where did you get it? And he said, Bob Friedrich Jr. gave it. So it came right from our charrette. It had probably a year or two before. And so then I said, well, if that is developed, first of all, you've got to annex it into the city because you need to take care of sanitary waste. And the only way you can get that sanitary waste taken care of is by a sewer line. You can't do it for 170 houses, any kind of septic system. And so that led then to the city annexing that property. And so it evolved, and then that developer went out of business or something and decided not to do it. Continues to be called Rose Prairie, but he was the one that gave it. I think his name was Matt Eller. Anyway, then along comes McClure and proposed this one. His first proposal was for over 700 units. And there was objections to that from the city council and from the public. And so he reduced it down to 620. And that's what you're proposing that Kelly is mentioning is going to be given to you next month. That area will not support 620 homes, I'm sorry, and still protect the park. I argued back when the Rose Prairie development that this was a better way to check the land than was the agriculture that was going on at the time, and it continued up to the present day, because that agriculture has filled in the wetlands. And I would like to ask John, how you can conclude that the North Wetland Complex is functioning well enough when the first wetland is almost completely filled with sediment. And not only that, the second wetland in the series is also partly filled up with sediment. That's going to be needed to be dredged out if you intend to go forward with further development in that parcel of land. So going back to my background, I'm an ecologist. I've had training in wetland ecology as well as terrestrial. And when I saw the sign up the property about 4 months ago and saw it was for sale, I thought, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity for the city to protect the park and to have a real class park for biodiversity. But set aside 40 to 50 acres for ball fields, and even at a partial, that would be a drop in the bucket if you add it to Hayden Park. The whole parcel is really needed to do some good for things like biodiversity. And biodiversity is very important. We're losing insects and species like crazy. And we need to protect the earth in that regard. And so I really feel that you should think the long term for your grandchildren and their children, because they are the ones that are going to be using this land in the future. And that area is marginal for development, it's marginal for agriculture, it's marginal for anything except to put it in natural area and manage it as a natural park, not as something that's, more and more diversified as far as usages. You can't have ball fields and the pollinator areas and housing all together on a small piece of land. That's a very small piece of land. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to me. And that's, I think I said a lot in my letters too.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay.
I'm sorry, pardon me. Jerry Neal.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jerry.
Okay, hi, this is Jerry Neal. I'm at 916 Ridgewood Avenue. You guys have already heard from me. I wrote you a letter, not very sciencey actually, kind of mostly from my heart, I think, about things like our disregard and therefore our devaluing of making space for biodiversity, the point that Irv just raised. Then I raised some, to me, serious concerns about citizen understanding of development and conservation overlays with respect to developing that upper watershed above Ada Hayden. And I even threw in a short list of options and ideas that other people had mentioned to me that might bring everybody to the table. But I'm going to comment tonight on something slightly different. Should you decide to retain the commitment to the current Rose Prairie development, I think my overriding concern is about how we keep this crown jewel, I mean, Ada Hayden Park, looking and functioning like the crown jewel that it is. So many communities would fall over sideways to have something like this that they could claim for their communities. And I'm highly influenced in any comments I'm going to make here by reading the Friends of Ada Hayden reports and exchanges that they've had with the staff. They take a deeper look at the science in these reports, and to me, that deeper look suggests that we don't really have a handle on how the developed Rose Prairie property uses may impact the water quality and Ada Hayden in general as a high use in the living park. So the way I read that is a development will incur unmeasured and ongoing risk to Ada Hayden. So I think that we shouldn't even question it. We should be willing to choose extra investment to make sure that we are being responsible about that land use and the water quality. And Jim Peace mentioned the importance of monitoring and sampling, and I think that we need to take that seriously. Although I'm not sure what recourse is out there, even if we start seeing trends that there are nutrient or other contaminant exports becoming excessive. Still, we need to think about that as part of how we would do monitoring. And we need a budget for ongoing maintenance of the wetlands and the area. I mean, yes, I'm sure we can clean up the water to drink if we need to. There'll probably be some fancy technology coming along, but I just think that if that's the only metric that we're using here, then we're not being serious about the growing value of this park, not only to users, but to nature and to wildlife. So that's my comment. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Jerry.
Merlin Fonkook.
Merlin Fonkook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I didn't get a chance to look over this information hardly at all. I would have liked to. But what's striking to me is perhaps the hesitancy of the council to invest in this, saving this property, versus your willingness to ask the public to spend $6, $7, $8 million on extending the infrastructure over as far as the Verbio plant. I don't really understand why we seemingly want to chase dollars when there are other values that you can't even put a dollar value on. Thank you.
Thank you, Merlin.
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close public input. Okay, council. Additional comments, questions from staff?
I just want to say, I think this is, it's an interesting question for us because we have gone along with this plan for so long. I have to wonder how much of what we're doing is inertia as opposed to thinking seriously about the potential to do something different with that Rose Prairie property. I have to admit, I've seen that property over the years, and it never occurred to me that there could be an opportunity for that to be a park or an additional wetland for Ada Hayden. My main concerns about that property are that it is going to damage the watershed if we have that development. And I had concerns when we were discussing this last time around in 2016. I'm especially concerned about the gas station, and I would like to see us doing more water monitoring. But I also recognize that in our Ames 2040 plan discussions, we have been talking about that as housing, and we need housing. But we haven't had any housing built there in the last 20 years, or however long it's been under discussion. I think Irv gave us a good vision of the trajectory of this property. So I appreciate the Friends of Ada Hayden bringing this forward, just to make us think a little bit more about what we're planning with it.
Other comments?
I'd like to dovetail on what Gloria said. I think we should be very proud of the work of the Friends Group of Ada Hayden. They have done a marvelous job of developing this. It's been a great partnership with the city, and we are very fortunate to have leadership of Irv and Jim and others in that leadership group. And just through the years, they've done a tremendous job, and they've done a great job in the proposal. I thought Jim's letter in particular was masterful and very thoughtful, and a lot of time went into that proposal. So I know I speak for the council. We appreciate very much the thoughtfulness that went into this proposal. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Otherwise, there are 5 alternatives presented, and we're looking for some direction from council.
Mayor, I know what staff is recommending, but I'm going to move alternative 2 and see if anyone is interested in seconding that.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I think this is a very important matter, Gloria and Rachel. And if you believe that this is a direction we should take, I would love to hear the reasons that support your position.
Tim, I'm making that motion based on having grave concerns about the watershed and having seen a number of years where we're not getting development there. I'm not convinced that this property as it stands right now is financially viable for development. Maybe it is. Maybe this time will be the magic charm, but I think the best means of protecting Ada Hayden is by putting this in city hands, and I think we could use the property. And this, you might say this isn't very financially savvy because we can get a lot more tax dollars off it, but it hasn't been developed. So we aren't getting the tax dollars. So I guess I'm voting against inertia. But I'd be willing to look at other things too. I'm just putting this out here, and if council doesn't support it, then that's your vote.
I think it's an important suggestion. The staff report has addressed the issue of water quality. And do you have information that beyond the speculation, I mean, do you have any information that would support the contention that the staff report is incorrect? I mean, 95%.
Tim, I think we got that, didn't we, from the Friends?
But so the staff is incorrect on the water quality. I mean, I think it's an important issue, but I tend to want to rely on the staff report on this.
I think the argument that was made by Friends of Ada Hayden is that we don't have longitudinal data. And I think that we've discussed the testing of the water at least once since I've been on council, maybe twice. And we don't have longitudinal data. So I'm not saying that the model the staff used is wrong, but I think that we're in a time of grave climate changes. And I don't know that any of us can know what's going to be happening in the future. So I'm not an expert, but we've got a bunch of people who know things on both sides of this issue. So that's what makes it difficult.
Further discussion?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of factors to consider. I think I like the idea too, and so I'll be supportive of Gloria's motion because I think, I mean, I do get to the financial concern that Tim, you raised, but I think if decisions about land protection were always made on a financial basis, we wouldn't have some of the great pieces of land conservation that we have across the country, or I mean, not just in Ames, but just in general. That there is a value to nature in its pure form too. So, but it is tricky. It's costly too. So, I mean, I like the idea, but I'm kind of skeptical about the success of a bond vote, even going into it. But I think that's just my honest take on that, is if people would be supportive again of a price tag like that, especially when we need a pool and we have some other things too that, might end up coming to a bond vote as well. So again, a tough one. But I appreciate the work the staff did on this too. My decision, it doesn't come lightly. I know they put a lot of work and thought into things as well. So, yeah.
So, I guess I'm glad Bronwyn brought up the point about the bond issue. I think when I'm looking at the staff report, there are a number of concerns that I have about the feasibility of what this looks like down the road. To start, obviously, I'm very concerned about the housing aspect. We've have this piece identified in the 2040 plan that we just finished. And there was no discussion about doing anything other than designating this for housing during that very long process. And while I agree that Ada Hayden is a jewel and an incredible asset for our community, I think we've heard from staff that we're still able to protect the water quality and the environment around Ada Hayden, even with housing being developed. And to top that off, I'm not sure that a community park with soccer fields and baseball fields and playgrounds and things like that really fits in the nature of what we intended for Ada Hayden. And to Steve's point, is there a better place for that type of amenity down the road? The bond issue, I agree, is a huge piece. And frankly, I think we have other priorities in terms of asking the community to pay for amenities. And I don't see the bond issue being a feasible option. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting the motion.
So go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Thanks. As for the tax revenue, that feels like a total wash to me, because if we don't build housing there, we're going to build housing somewhere else. The tax revenue is going to happen based on population change, not based on it happening exactly there. So that doesn't speak to me so much. There are the sunk costs of, well, at least committed, maybe not totally sunk, costs of construction of infrastructure that's going out there with the anticipation that it would actually be used to service human needs. So, that we would just have to swallow that at some level otherwise. So that's a cost. I guess I have two main concerns here. We are getting a lot of feedback from people who are expressing reservations about water quality. And some of that is confused, I think, with concern about our drinking water supply. And I think we all understand that that's not meaningfully at risk. I don't think anyone is really telling us that that's meaningfully at risk. So I think we should keep that in mind. As to the nutrient levels in the lake, yes, that is a concern. Yes, we don't have the perfect longitudinal data about it, but that doesn't say to me that therefore the best modeling that we do have is wrong. I don't see a line from here to there. But also, I think most importantly for me, I can imagine concluding that both it's a great opportunity to expand a wonderful park into an even more wonderful park, and doing that in the future after we've had some more time to both deliberate on this and to hear from the public. We have to remember, we got this request a month ago. This is our first and only meeting on this topic. This is a major allocation of resources. It's normally the sort of thing we would take up under goal setting. And I think based on the established trajectory, you're right. I mean, people have been talking about development here for years. It hasn't happened. I think part of the original request to us was based on the observation that the Friends sort of thought, well, it's never going to happen, so you should do something else. So my feeling is, if a year passes and it doesn't happen, then maybe we should continue thinking about it, and maybe we should engage the community broader in understanding what are the trade-offs between this sort of expenditure and other sorts of expenditures. So I said a lot here, but I don't think the time is right to instruct staff to change course on this in the middle of what appears to be another possibly successful attempt to do something along the lines of the conservation subdivision that council approved 4 years ago.
Well, I think it also has been reinforced that while there is some skepticism, I think, on those that have sent in comments, that we have people who are trained in engineering and analysis, and there has been no intimation of relaxing any of the conservation overlays in addition. And I think that there's a heightened awareness of the importance of protecting this watershed as well. So, and the park. So, all right, there's a motion on the floor. There's been a second. Is there any further discussion before we vote on the motion?
I think David's points are very well said. I want to speak to the issue of the tax revenues just for a bit. So I'm not completely sure if the tax revenues are really a wash. We only have so much land that can be developed readily. And so if people aren't going to have the opportunity to build housing here, it's not as if they're going to wait 5-10 years until we develop that. We're losing opportunities for housing in Ames to Ankeny every day. I don't know what last year's building starts are, but a couple of years ago, there was a 6-to-1 ratio between Ankeny and Ames. And so a third of our workers in Ames live outside of Ames and have to commute. If we're concerned about the environment, if we want to create less reliance on fossil fuels for getting people to work, we should find opportunities to have them live closer to where they work. And so I do think that the tax consequences are important to consider. And there are a lot of infrastructure costs that we're voting on tonight, and we don't have a clue. So on the one hand of the balance, we all love Ada Hayden. And if we love Ada Hayden, we love it even bigger. We would expect the Friends Group as advocates to make that request, and that's perfectly normal and logical. But we don't have that luxury. We have to balance the various needs of the community, known and unknown, against the desirability of an expanded Ada Hayden. So let's just assume that the expanded Ada Hayden would be desirable and lovely, but that can't be the sum of our analysis. We have to look at these other costs and the consideration for the bond, the viability of the bond, and the impacts on the 2040 plan. I think this is one of the biggest issues that we've dealt with, and we have had, as David pointed out, very little public input. So I hope that we're able to put the pause on this tonight.
Okay, any further comments? Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
All right. Motion failed. Just for people's information, given the fact that in the future, this would require a vote to, could not vote on in terms of spending money to procure the park. And there's not a majority in favor of it, the motion failed.
John, could I introduce a sub motion here?
You can introduce a new motion, yes.
Yes, I would like to move that we remove the gas station approval from the zoning that we have approved.
If I could interject, Mayor.
Can't do that?
That's not, there's a lot of reasons why we can't do that tonight.
Okay, I will withdraw my motion.
Any further motions?
Could we, Kelly, would it be fair to move to direct staff to, well, I was going to say you'll be bringing us an idea when you hear it from a potential developer of that area, but should direct you to ask them questions about their willingness to compromise.
Obviously, I'll communicate the outcome of tonight's meeting to them, but I think you're going to see them soon to be able to ask those same questions of them about the commercial node and what their vision for that is. So I think we'll be able to deal with that in more detail at that time. And I'll obviously communicate it was a discussion point as part of this, so they're aware of it before we get to a meeting with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, if there was an interest in pursuing, I think it was described as scenario 4, which was some of the targeted protection measures. Is that something that would be discussed with the developer as the plan emerges, or is that something that would need to be voted on before the plan emerges?
I would say since the concept is evolving, I think it's something that we just have to converse about as it moves forward. And again, this isn't a hidden meeting, so we'll definitely be able to talk about some of the issues. We discussed with them before this interest in water quality and how does the design benefit Ada Hayden, and if there was something extra that the city could invest in the project, is that something that could be explored? And they said yes, but we don't have a final concept to really give you any tangible answers to. So I think it's something that'll be a continuing conversation with the project.
Okay.
I have just one last question too. Well, maybe other people have motions, but Steve or maybe Keith, is there a budget or a plan to dredge out the wetlands as they do become filled in?
So with that, we do have a management plan for Ada Hayden that actually Jim Pease and Irv Claus, put together. I'm not sure. I don't remember about the wetlands. I know we do need to dredge them. Right now, just with some of the information that Jim and Irv have been sharing, is more new news to me. But we will work on getting that done, because if they are full, I did talk to John Dunn about just assessing the wetlands to see how full they are, and then what we need to do. So with that, we'll do that, and then incorporate into the budget what we need to do to take appropriate action.
Perfect. So that's already in action. We don't have to do any directing there. Sounds like.
Correct.
Cool. Thank you.
John, would it be okay if I have one more question for Keith?
Certainly.
Keith, we had some good discussion tonight about the water quality of Ada Hayden, and I had sought to have a greater frequency of water testing, and Keith explained about the thought process in terms of the timing of the frequency, and that was very helpful for me. I think it'd be extremely helpful for people watching. Keith, could you take just a minute and explain what goes into the thought process about the frequency of the testing?
No, actually, I think John Dunn would be a better one to respond to that, Tim. He's the one that has done or initiated the testing and because of the water aspect. So John, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, in the capital improvements plan, we budget every 5 to 7 years to do 2 back-to-back years of water quality monitoring in the wetlands. The reason that we haven't proposed doing that every year is we're really looking for trends in the watershed, and it's really easy from year to year to get lost in just the seasonal variation of what happens given the weather, this year versus last year. And so it was really about trying to be fiscally responsible with doing that sampling and trying to do it close enough together that we can pick up trends, but not so often that we're generating a lot of data without really gathering a lot of knowledge from the data, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Hearing no other comments or any motions, we're going to move on unless I hear anything else from any council member. Okay, moving on to item number 30, staff report regarding East Industrial zoning. Kelly?
So what we have in front of us tonight is a response to a request by the ADC to have the city move forward on establishing zoning for the East Industrial area. We've had this in our work plan for a number of years, and we've held off waiting for the utility decisions to be made, knowing that zoning without utilities would not result in development. So the ADC and the city obviously are planning to move forward on utilities next year. So the ADC would like us to move ahead on the zoning as well. As we described in the staff report, the East Industrial seems to be targeted towards a larger industrial user set than maybe we see in most of the city. And our 2 industrial zones, or our 3, I guess, including the research park, don't quite seem to fit with that targeted large user that is envisioned for the area. So we're proposing to create a new district rather than have to involve existing properties and existing zoning districts and changes. And what we're asking for council to do tonight is to direct us to move forward based on the concepts that are described in the staff report. If we move forward, we'll go through a zoning review with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then there'll ultimately be a public hearing back with the city council on a formal ordinance to establish the exact mix of uses and the exact development standards for the area. And we're recommending to move forward with this, and it can be accomplished probably over the next 6 to 8 weeks to have the zoning designed and adopted so that we're then able and ready to apply it to property in the East Industrial Prairie View area.
Kelly, would the entire area be zoned the same then, all 1,300 acres, or would there be different zoning classifications, or what would you envision?
I would say to start, we would probably zone, in the past, we've said we would probably hold off on zoning the property and keep it ag until there was a user, partially because we didn't have a zoning district to apply. And that lets us be a little more responsive to a specific user and their utility needs to make sure that everything is covered for the area. Because really what we're putting in is trunk line utilities. And then we have over 1,200 acres out there. with no formal subdivision plan or anything else. So if we apply it all at one time, it would be one zoning district because we don't really have a pattern for development. Or we could choose to zone these large pieces as the development project comes forward. That'll be determined after we write the zoning district.
I think the request was that it would be zoned to start with to get the site ready or site certified. Is that correct?
It could be done that way. I think all we're asking for tonight is to write the zoning district. We do not feel at this time that we're ready to go out and notice property owners and necessarily start the rezoning activities. If council wants us to initiate that in parallel, we could do that.
Any other questions? Any questions for Kelly? All right, I'll open up public comment. Brian, is anybody who wants to address council on this particular topic this evening?
Yes, Mayor. Dan Culhane has his hand raised.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dan Culhane, 3115 Aspen Road and 304 Main Street in downtown Ames, Ames Chamber of Commerce and Ames Economic Development Commission. You know, I've listened with interest tonight, and you know, oftentimes I think I take it for granted that everybody understands the impact and the importance of Prairie View Industrial Center. And so I'd preface my comments by suggesting or offering that I really do appreciate you referring the letter. I appreciate Kelly mobilizing quickly, and we like the zoning that he is proposing tonight. You know, the attributes are many, and they're all obvious to us if you live here. I-35, the Union Pacific Railroad, in the shadows of Iowa State University. It shouldn't be lost on anybody that being in close proximity to a tier 1 research institution for a lot of industries is really important. Prairie View is a focal point for a number of our partners. The Iowa Economic Development Authority has made this a certified site. Alliant Energy, which services this area with natural gas and electricity, has spent well over $1 million to date on securing over 700 acres of property under option. We're going into the 5th year of options on those properties. And this reason there's nothing there is because you can't hook up to anything right now. And I think all of you folks understand that, but I sometimes think the public may not. The reason nothing's out there is there is no sewer, there is no water to connect to. And as a result, we continue to wait collectively as a community. Prospects like this site, folks, I can't underscore that anymore. And I can show you plenty of documentation. The most recent one is one that is still stinging at our office, and that's a 1.5 million square foot user that would have taken the better part of 300 acres on the north side of Lincoln Way, build a glass plant. We were the last site in Iowa. We were the furthest west site in the companies and international companies' search for a location in the upper Midwest. And there was 300 jobs attached to that project that would have paid their production workers a base rate of $60,000 per year. And so as we look at the opportunities and the prospects for Prairie View Industrial Center, we couldn't be more excited or more proud of what promise that holds. That project did move on for 2 reasons. 1, the sewer and water wasn't in the ground, and 2, it wasn't zoned. And one thing that I've known for a long time, I've been in this business an awfully long time, is businesses like certainty. They want to know that when they choose a location and they go public and it's in the newspaper or wherever it might be, that what they said they intend to do, they can do. And we were eliminated in large part because of those 2 things. Simply were not ready. We've also got a Texas company right now that's looking to option property out there, but for much the same reason, there's some trepidation because they don't know when the sewer and water will come in, and they don't know what it'll ultimately be zoned. And so I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you for just a brief moment tonight, because I'm really grateful you're moving the zoning forward, and I appreciate Kelly's efforts and his team's efforts, because this is another important step in the process of getting this property ready to go. And finally, I'd offer that it's not public yet who it is, but we do have a 100,000 square foot user that will build a warehouse with about 20 jobs, I believe, and that will most likely land in Story City. And in large part, they're going to Story City because the site is ready. It's ready to go, and they can facilitate the project. I'll tell you that the 1.5 million square foot user, if you think about how big of a building that is, it would probably be about 4 times the size of the Danfoss complex on 13th Street. And so that was a clean industry, tremendous employment opportunities, tremendous, again, production workers. You know, we've got a nice mix in our marketplace, in our economy of highly skilled and lab workers and office workers. And at the same time, there's a large demographic for production work. And these would have been outstanding production jobs. And we missed that opportunity. I'll stop there, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Ryan?
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
We'll close public input. Council, you have 3 alternatives. Entertain a motion or further conversation or discussion.
I'll make a motion.
All right, David.
I would move to direct staff to prepare a zoning text amendment to create a new industrial zoning district for the area based on the standards described in the report. That's alternative 1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Gloria, seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, council, as I mentioned before, item 31 was pulled by staff, so we're going to move on to item 32, staff report regarding splash pad water consumption.
Keith will start now.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I think the report that I gave council has a lot of information, you know, just regarding you know, the 3 options for a water management system. You know, they all have, you know, some pros and cons to them. You know, the recirc is treated just like a pool, and there are standards that we need to meet. There are some requirements that with a recirculation system, you do need to have a pool or a restroom. You know, we did mention in the report about showers, and we did get, you know, from the Iowa Health Department that showers are required. However, they have given variances before if you have a UV system with it, and I think that's the route that we would go if we go to a recirc. The water consumption is about 1/9 of what it is with a flow through. There is more labor costs with a recirc. The flow through is probably the easiest one. You know, you turn it on, you don't have a lot of maintenance costs, but as you can see, you know, almost over 6 million gallons, almost 6.5 million gallons in the information they gave you, that, you know, that water just runs through the features and then goes right to the sewer system. Right now, we're thinking that it would need to go to the sanitary sewer, which would be an additional cost as well, you know, in addition to the water. The one thing there are across the state and across the country, most of the splash pads are flow through, but in some cases, they don't pay for water. The departments don't pay for water, so it's not a concern for them from a cost perspective. For us, you know, adding another, you know, $55,000 to our budget would be difficult. And again, there's also the water consumption aspect. You know, the repurpose system, you know, there are some real positives with that, you know, that you run it through, but then you also, you know, repurpose that water for irrigation and so on. You know, however, you know, just in a day, you know, we would generate over 60,000 gallons of water. Generally, these tanks don't, you know, might be a 4,000 or 5,000 gallon tank. So a lot of that would still wind up going to, you know, to the sewer. And just for us, you know, when we're out watering flower beds and so on during the summertime, we generally might use about 2,000 gallons a day. That's a far cry from the 67 or 65,000 gallons that would be generated. The only way that the repurposed system would make sense is if you had a irrigation pond, and you had it in a situation or in a location where you would use a lot of water. So those are the three systems, with it, just with when you're talking the budget, the water consumption, the conservation aspect, and so on. And if we can get a variance with the UV, seems like the research system probably would be the way to go. The one downside of that is we have $330,000 for the project, $30,000 for design, $300 for construction. And you can see with the research system, it'd probably be about, $500,000. So we would need to come up with, $200,000 from the capital side, to make that work. So I would entertain any questions that anybody has.
So I have a question, and let me just start by saying that in describing this topic, I sent out an email to a bunch of people earlier today claiming that we'd keep the Brookside wading pool. Is that true, Keith?
No, since we brought this up a number of years ago, the whole idea with the Brookside wading pool is that we would demolish it and we would put a splash pad in or out of, the floodplain. The wading pool, and the reason for that, the wading pool, it's got an antiquated water management system. It loses more water than it should. We have to staff it, and it's in the floodplain. And those are the reasons why we, suggested that we demolish it when we put a new splash pad in.
Thanks. So that was my mistake. Can you explain what the UV system would be like to people who are using the splash pad?
Yes. So the whole idea, and that would be in place of showers. So the idea of having showers is that people would go and take a shower before they utilize the amenity, the splash pad, because what it does is it washes off any fecal matter and other contaminants. So what the UV system does is it's ultraviolet system. So what the water does is the water passes over that UV bulbs. There's a number of bulbs involved, but it passes through that, and what that does is that kills a lot of the organisms, such as cryptosporidium, and which you tend to have some of the outbreaks with that. So what it does is it disinfects the water, takes care of some of the smaller bacteria that your sand filters don't get.
Okay, so it's part of the filtration system and the users don't even know it's there, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's different than having to take a shower beforehand. Thanks.
Yep.
Other questions for Keith? Gloria?
Yeah, I found it difficult to separate this item from the discussion of the plaza later because splash pads were being mentioned in the discussion of the plaza. So
spray pads.
But in my mind, water coming up out of the ground is, water coming up out of the ground. So I guess my question is, what's the difference between what we're considering here and those spray pads that could go in a plaza?
Yeah. Well, and we use the term in different settings. So splash pad generally, in a lot of people in the industry use those terms interchangeably, but we use them for one simple reason. With the splash pad, we're really looking at, there's a lot of above ground amenities, and in the pictures that you see, there may be a dump bucket. There may be an umbrella or a mushroom where the water comes out and flows and you got this wall of water that you can go to. There may be, water guns, different things like that you can spray people with. So when we think splash pad, or when we talk splash pad, we're talking about a lot of the above ground amenities that could be included. When we're talking spray pad, with the plaza that we'll be coming to, there the idea and the pictures that were shown in that report, are more ground features. The water is bubbling up, coming out of the ground. You can have it do different things. You can have that water spray pretty long distances. You can have light attached to that water when it moves. It still gives a play function, but it just doesn't have those above ground amenities. So that's really the difference that we're looking at, between the two. The spray pad also would most likely be much smaller, than what we're talking in regards to a splash pad.
And so much smaller means much less water being used. And so we're talking about a system that's going to be much more like what we have at Furman with the recirculation, but a spray pad maybe doesn't have that kind of recirculation.
Well, no, we'll have that conversation, but with a spray pad, if it is smaller water and you may not be using as much, because of the ground features, and also with the fact that you may be using it in the evening with lights to be more of an ambiance, for different activities and attractions. You may still want to go with a recirculation system for that, even though it's less quantities of water.
So the reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to understand whether we're actually going to need two different facilities, or whether a splash pad and a plaza are compatible with each other.
Yeah, with they could be potentially, Gloria, but we're really looking at, with the splash pad being more of an amenity out in the park system. One of the things that we're always looking at is how can we be equitable across the community with the placement of things, and what we're really looking at, you saw in the report, that really probably only two places because of the restroom situation. That Daly Park and Emma McCarthy Lee would be really the only two places right now, unless we constructed another restroom somewhere else. So with the splash pad, it's going to be larger, about 4,800 square feet than the example that I had in the report. So we're looking at putting that out in the west end of town, and put one of these amenities there, give them something to go to. The spray pad with the downtown plaza, I think that's where we want to find out from council really what is your vision when we get to the next item for that use. You want to bring a lot of in kids, will be there, utilizing that, but we really were thinking that they would be separate. That splash pad would be out in the park system somewhere. Downtown plaza would have some type of a spray pad, but a smaller, still provide, potentially some play feature to it. But we're really looking at those as two different components.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Any other questions for Keith? All right, Brian, we'll open up public input. Is there anybody that wants to address council on this topic?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close public input. Council, direction, Keith's looking for, or staff's looking for direction on which of the three systems that you would recommend pursuing.
You want a motion to that effect?
Please.
I would move that we direct staff to pursue the recirculation system.
Your second? Amber seconded, thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or motion carried? Thank you. Let's take a quick 5-minute break before we get into the discussion of the downtown plaza vision. So we're back in 7:56. Move on to item number 33, discussion of downtown plaza vision. Keith and Kelly.
Yeah. So I'm just to start things, and again in the report, there's some background information and regarding one of the goals that the city council has for downtown community space. And one of the things we really wanted to do is, before we start hiring somebody and going through design and having public input, what we really felt was necessary was to get council's input on what is your vision for a downtown plaza. What goals are you trying to accomplish, and what kind of activities do you see? Because, and we'll get to location at the end, because the parking lot right across from City Hall is an option, roughly 1.2, 1.3 acres. But depending on your vision and your goals and what activities you like to see, that space might not accomplish everything that you want, and we may need to look at something else. So what we wanted to do is start off for the vision, and I put some things in the report. But as far as a vision, what does council see this plaza being? What do you imagine it to be? So I guess we can get some comments, and then obviously we'll take this information as we move forward and get with a consultant. So comments from council members. What is your vision for this downtown plaza?
Amber, you want to start us off?
Sure. No, that's fine. I mean, the first bullet point that you have there, A, is something that I've hoped is that it would be a year-round attraction, that we would be able to convert it, from a space to be used in the summer months to something that could be used during the winter months as well. And I do think that it being a natural attraction for people downtown, or to complement other activities that may be going downtown, should be a goal as well. And then I also like the idea of it being a place for not, large events like you might have a band shell, but, smaller events, whether it might be like you've got let's say a little local DJ that plays there on a Thursday evening at night, or a local musician, and people can come out and, bring food and gather around. So, but I think having a year-round space is probably one of my primary goals.
Good.
Is there a way to put those pictures up just for people who are watching, just to give a couple of different suggestions of what we're looking at?
Yeah. Do you want me to share screen, Keith?
Sure. Yeah, if you have the report and show some of that.
Thanks for doing that.
Those were just some possibilities, and you can see in some of the pictures that Kelly, once he gets it up, there is one, and I think it was Sioux City, the pictures that we have there, where it's a splash pad in the summertime. But yeah, just the pictures towards the top. This again is what we talked about earlier, Gloria. This is more of those ground features, that in the daytime, the heat of the day, kids can run through that. You see that down at the state fairgrounds. They have some of those types of amenities, but in the evening, still has the lighted, aspect. The next two pictures, it's the same location. They have a spray pad or a splash pad in the summertime, and then they convert it to an ice rink in the wintertime. And then the last two pictures were just in regards to if there was a desire by council to have some type of a structure, just two different things. One on the left, kind of more of a shade structure, a little bit more contemporary versus, a traditional shelter on the right-hand side. But again, those are just some various things, and there's a lot more pictures that we could share, but just wanted to throw a few in there. So.
Yeah, if I could tag on to that, some of the things that aren't shown here that have been talked about in the past is obviously including art, having activities, kinetic elements to the visit to a plaza. At times we've had flowing water rather than spray pads as an option, maybe to differentiate from the park and rec facility that we just talked about. So there's kind of the world's your oyster when it talks about a plaza. It's really about what the space is meant for, is about organized, this is my opinion, is it about organized participation, or is it just an area that anybody could stumble across and, hey, find something interesting to see or do here, and kind of be active for a variety of different people at different times of the day.
Thanks, Kelly. So other comments from council?
Tim?
So are we in sort of brainstorming mode?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is the public still watching?
Probably.
So I think we should just brainstorm and not necessarily worry about the viability at this point. But one of the things that I would love to see someday is Ames hooked into the bike trail system with the Des Moines metro area. And so if people are coming up from the metro area on the High Trestle Trail, and then they make their way up to Ames, where exactly would they go? And in the next few years, that's going to be a reality. And if you think about, if you've been on the High Trestle Trail to Ankeny, eventually you end up at a very nice area. They have restrooms, and it's right next to the Fire Trucker Brewery. And it's a really nice destination that you can park there, and that's a starting point for many people. But it might be nice to have a sort of a welcome to Ames sort of destination for people. And then they're downtown, they're in proximity with our restaurants, bars, and shops. So that might be something to think about, is just how it would connect in with the bike infrastructure.
Good.
Anything else, Tim?
I'm excited to hear other people's ideas. These pictures were really fun for me to contemplate, so I appreciate the work that went into finding some to stimulate our thinking. But I'm excited about the conversation.
How about Bronwyn? How about what thoughts do you have?
Yeah, let me think. I liked Amber's comment about making it year-round utility. So I love the concept of like a skating rink in the winter downtown, and a space that we could use for other things then in the summer too. So maybe like some venue for music or speaking, kind of like the scale of the Roosevelt stage rather than a duplication of any sort of band shell service or anything like that. But something that Maximum Ames could use when they do their stuff, and but maybe speakers could be there too. Those are just some thoughts. But I like Tim's idea too. I think it's true that we will be more and more connected, hopefully, as we pave the trail down to Airport Road and connect into that network. And so yeah, some sort of amenity like that. Are restrooms, is that We had an email today too that was supportive of having public restrooms. And I would second that. I think there's probably a high need for that downtown too.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts.
Good.
Gloria?
Yeah, I love the idea of a year-round space because every time I go someplace that has a skating rink in their downtown, it just seems so joyful in the winter. And so I really like that. I also get sort of depressed by plazas that are all concrete. And so I would appreciate us having some green space along with whatever concrete features might be necessary for a spray pad. I like the idea of the spray pad. I just am still not sure whether it's, depending on how much it costs with a recirculation system, you know, that may weigh into whether I would want to see it in this plaza or not. Some of the ideas that we saw coming out of the community and regional planning students last spring were very intriguing to me, and they involved artwork as interactive pieces of furniture or interactive pieces of furniture as artwork. So there were large sculptural pieces that were used in various communities that people could sit on or play on, but they had an artistic feel to them and invited engagement with them. I think the most important thing about this space is that it can't be sterile, because there's nothing that is more off-putting than a cold, unwelcoming plaza space. And I think all of us have seen those in various cities when we've traveled, and you just know when the feel is right. So I'd like to see some trees. I wouldn't mind having a small stage. I think Bronwyn's right in saying more of a Roosevelt size than something like the band shell, because we've got a band shell downtown, and making this complementary to what we've already got, I think, is important. I guess one of my questions would be, what about facilities for parking? And, you know, that's something people are always asking about. So is it going to be something that is difficult because of the location, or are we going to be inviting people to be biking in and riding the bus by placing this across from City Hall? And I think that wherever we put it, we have to be considering the ways that people will get there, and that we make sure that it's feasible for them to get there, and not put it someplace where there isn't access or parking. And I guess just make it possible to visit a welcoming space.
Okay. Rachel?
So I definitely agree with the year-round element to it. I think that's the best way that we can get the most use out of the plaza space. I'd really like to see things for all ages available at the plaza. So maybe those kinetic elements that are for younger kids, and then art and green space that could be enjoyed by everyone. I like the idea of a small stage as well, just so it can be more of a destination for events, sort of that downtown hub that we want to create. But I'd really like to see it have that everyday utility as well for people that are downtown to be able to hang out in or enjoy as well. But I like a lot of what has been brainstormed so far.
David?
So here's my list. I like the City Hall location. I think it says a lot to have a sort of joyful plaza right next to City Hall. And we have the space already, so that seems like a good fit to me. I like light spray features at night, at least something to consider. I'm worried a little bit about traditional fountains just because they might make too much noise. We can have traditional fountains too, I guess, although I don't prefer them. But, I think people need to have conversations there, and a small stage might be appropriate. Alternatively, maybe just an obvious corner that has good acoustical properties would do the trick. That is, it doesn't necessarily have to be an elevated stage to fulfill the function. I totally agree, it shouldn't be all hardscape. I lived for some years a couple of blocks away from Boston City Hall Plaza. And if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. It was truly impressive. I think it's not what we're going for. Informal seating opportunities, ice rink in winter, great idea. And I would prefer more innovative than a traditional look for the structures there. To the extent that we have like shades, we have some pictures here of like covers and shades. Let's keep in mind that they're there in order to keep the sun off you, not just to look nice from a distance. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks. Nicole.
Yeah, so I would go back to what Gloria said and making sure people have access to it. Because a lot of students, I would say, don't have cars, so they aren't going to be able to drive to whatever plaza we end up creating. So having either like a bus stop there or like places that students can maybe park their bike or something would be a really good thing. And then something that Bronwyn brought up as well, the need for more public bathrooms downtown. If we do place this downtown, we are going to need to increase that, because I know I've experienced that as well, having a hard time like finding a bathroom downtown. So that would be a thing to bring up as well. And then also kind of marketing it not only as like a place for little kids to go to like have fun, in the water, but also a place for older students, college students to go hang out as well, I think would be really important.
Thanks. Well, you can access to get on the internet with your screen sharing, or is it just PDFs? I wanted you to, since we're just brainstorming, I'm going to take some liberties here and brainstorming for a second. That's why can you get on the?
Can I get on to what?
Can you Google the Exchange in Fort Collins, Colorado?
Yeah, but to be safe, I'm going to not screen share until I get there.
Okay. While he's doing that, I think some of us were out on a Pier City visit it was last year. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the what it should be, but I was extremely impressed with the fact that they have this, it's kind of like an incubator food court using shipping containers around a central plaza area. And it's vibrant. And I think that there has to be a reason for people coming each day. I think if it just becomes just seating, it could be potentially not as vibrant. But there's an example of in that silo is actually an ice cream shop. Then there's green space where they can play lawn games. Kids can go out there and mess around. But they just took shipping containers and stacked them, and they've made. Some of them have bathrooms in them. Some are office space, and some are like a few hundred square feet incubators for foodstuffs or for food venues. Now, on the right and left-hand side of that big picture is actually established retail. There's like a brewery on one side, and there's actually retail shops on the other. But they have outdoor seating, they have outdoor, play areas for kids. And actually, that's AstroTurf, I believe it is. If memory serves you right. She got some trees, but from what we understand, it is a vibrant hub of activity. Now, to recreate that, I'm not sure that's really going to be appropriate, but I'm just trying to say that, for vision casting, to have a mix of something that would really be drawing people in, I think food, and this actually has fencing around it. So there's actually an open carry where you can actually have an adult beverage and sit and stay within that particular area and enjoy it as well too. But you got lights, you got all ranges of individuals who can enjoy there. So anyway, I just think that that's something that just really incites excitement and vibrancy. Which I'm hearing all of us was talking about it.
be really pretty innovative.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think Steve and I were on that trip too. I can't remember what other council members were with us. The exchange was really interesting because it was kind of a small business incubator. With the shipping containers, it gave really small entrepreneurs a chance to start a business that did have some more permanency to it than maybe what a food truck has. And it was really an interesting space to think of it from an entrepreneurial perspective, not just from a open space perspective.
It also wasn't administered by the city though, right? It's a private.
Correct. It was privately run and managed, and yeah, that would obviously, we're not going to be renting space. If this was a direction that we could add entrepreneurial opportunities, there would have to be some kind of overarching management group. It would not be City Hall.
Good point, Brian. Yeah, I just that's a beauty.
I love it. I just think without the food, it's hard. And I do love the look of it though. I mean, it looks very attractive, like you said.
Well, it's also
weren't almost all of the businesses food businesses?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some that were actually office businesses. They were renting them. On the top of the picture, there's a red container right next to a shade awning, orange shade awning. That was for a office complex. There's a mix there. But Brown was right. It was not. This is not city owned. It was actually privately owned and developed. What's interesting is it also has seating on the second floor of some of those shipping containers at the bottom of the picture. So you actually have both verticality as well as horizontal space. So I just think if we're gonna just do some brainstorming, here's another option to think about that could become a destination and a magnet for people. I'm just trying to think of how often is Tom Evans Plaza, is that really overrun with people, because we're kind of doing that only on a little larger scale, I think. So what else can we offer that would be a magnet for people, and they would really enjoy it? And I think that there's a great opportunity here. Any other input for and vision for Keith and Kelly? And this is just a start.
I had one more thought about that kind of outdoor exercise equipment. People have asked us about that before, and that's sort of an adult play structure in a way, or it'd be in a way to engage. You could have a thing there to engage children, and then also I don't know, around the perimeter or something, have some of those exercise machines. There's a place in Gloria, Kearney, right? There's a park there that has outdoor exercise equipment, and that was really fun. My parents and I went, and we all sat, and you could lift weights with it one, and it was it is engaging. So just a thought.
Keith, what else?
Well, the next thing, so thanks for all those comments. It's very good. So the next thing is just from a goal standpoint, what goals do you have for this downtown plaza? What are you wanting to accomplish? Are you wanting to draw more people in? What are the measurables? How do we know if it's successful or not successful? So thoughts on that?
I think not only drawing people in, which would be nice if you could get people to make a special trip to downtown to check out this plaza, but I think more likely it's extending a stay. Someone comes downtown to shop, and then they're like, oh, I'm wandering around, and oh, hey, there's this cool thing. So for me, it would be more, like extensions of trips downtown. If we could build such a destination that people would drive for it, that would be cool, but I don't know that you'd get much outside of Ames traffic for something like that.
I think it's also not only would it, I think something like that Fort Collins was fantastic. I mean, I'm ready to vote a motion to just do that same thing. But it would also be an amenity that would improve the attractiveness of downtown as a place to work. So I think there's value in that as well.
So following up on that, I think if we could do something to enable this space to be used for people who are working downtown, like what we see out at Tedesco, where you've got solar powered stations where people can plug in their phones or their computers, so that if they have that flexibility, they can be working outside in a place that's a little more pleasant, and in these COVID times, that's just plain not indoors. So I'd love to see some of those solar powered workstations, or if you go with that Connex box look, they've got those out at Tedesco too. And I always think how utilitarian and yet attractive those are, because they allow you to be in nature while you're working.
Okay, so hopefully nobody from First National is watching. So I worry a little bit about the space in front of City Hall being big enough to accomplish something that's worth doing. And so I guess I would like to see at least get some consideration of approaching First National and saying, look, we would take your space and turn it into something that's really a terrific destination. I think we need more space than what City Hall affords. I think we should swing the bat hard and do something big and bold on this.
And that's a good point, Tim, because that's kind of leads to when we get to question 4 about, is that the right location? Based on the vision and the goals that council has, is 1.3 acres enough, or do we need to be looking for, a different space? And Kelly, when we get to that point, can probably show you, a couple of things that, that he has. But so other goals.
Amber, Rachel, or David, input, thoughts?
I tend to agree with Tim. I think that, I think the location across from City Hall is frankly a perfect location. It's central, it's in good proximity to Main Street, and in sort of a natural extension of that retail area, to Bronwyn's point, to keeping people downtown longer and making it, a destination where you can spend the entire day. And so if there's an opportunity that we can talk to First National and pursue that, that would be great. We've been talking about downtown enhancement plaza, whatever you want to call it, since I started on council 7 years ago. And if I have a goal, it's that we actually do something and do it soon. So.
David or Rachel, what goals might you have?
Not much to add. I see a bullet saying a space anyone can use at any time and at no cost, and I want that to be mostly the case there. I can imagine sometimes there being some special events, but I really hate the idea that you show up and you can't use it.
Okay. Rachel, anything else you want to add?
I think we should investigate maybe having a little bit more space. I think that location is perfect though, and I definitely second Gloria's idea on the solar panel ability to maybe work from that space outdoors. I think that would be a great asset to the plaza.
I would say one thing to add to that, if we want people to really spend time outside there and work, we would really need to have like good Wi-Fi available to people working there. Because a lot of people don't have hotspots they can just use for hours and hours on end. And I think obviously that Wi-Fi would need to be free, so we'd need to adjust for that as well.
Anyone else want to add anything else goal-wise? I think some of the visions, Keith, or things talked about, before the goals, would also include some goals in terms of year-round use and people being there, any time of year, not just 6 or 7 months a year for sake of discussion. So.
Yeah, I would agree, Mayor, and that's why with all these things, I'm not going to get hung up on, is it a vision, is it a goal, is it something else? These are all great comments, and that's what we really want, is keep them coming, and then we'll sort through it later, and this will help us as we move forward and bring on a consultant. So if there's no other goals, then the last thing, and you've already talked about some of it, is well, not quite the last thing, but what types of activities? You know, you've already talked about special events, you've talked about music, you've talked about skating. Are there other things? You've talked about the interactive art, you know, so a lot of different things that you've already talked about. Anything else to add in regards to activities that you'd like to see be able to take place in this plaza?
Ping pong?
What was that?
Some more ping pong. I mean, it's close to me at the Roosevelt, so I can just go down here and play. So I'm good, but it is fun and people like it.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, a brown one though, is that, are you saying some types of games that you have the ability to, you know, that would be encourage engagement with the community that they would come and do? Because I mean, those concrete ping pong tables are awesome at the Roosevelt Park. I mean, absolutely awesome. And so it's a great opportunity to provide alternatives.
Yeah, and I've seen people using them this week. So it's going into, you know, we're getting into winter. They're still getting used.
You know.
So a couple things. Do you think there would be interest of having the farmers market in the plaza area? I mean, we've always sort of had it where it is, so it's sort of hard to imagine moving it. Would that be a major change in the feel of farmers market?
I think so. You need a lot more concrete, and I don't think that's what you want. You might be able to use around it, on the streets around it, to center on it. But I don't think you want to close it down and have a hardscape that has to handle that kind of traffic, you know, every Saturday morning.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think
another sort of random point I'd bring up. The Iowa League of Cities had a trip in Council Bluffs a couple years ago, and I can send you details in this, but they have a park where they have a way for parents to walk children sort of in this path, and they have a page from a children's book. And so it's just sort of a novel way of getting kids reading, and you see people taking children out and they swap out the pages of the book periodically. But I sort of like the idea of working with the library and just sort of encouraging literacy. You see other places, other cities that incorporate poetry in public spaces. So it'd be sort of fun to think about incorporating poetry or some kind of children's literature around a plaza. I can send you some pictures of that park in Council Bluffs. It was very innovative.
And actually, we're having a conversation with the library, or actually Jerry Hyde from the library, with Raising Readers, to actually do a storybook trail, which I think is what you're talking about within the park system somewhere. So, just a little side note on that.
Super.
I think it would be nice if there was some way for us to develop a festival of some kind. I mean, we've got Maximum Ames, but we haven't really maximized Maximum Ames. And people keep saying, we need a festival. And if we had one, that would be, you know, a likely place to do it. Or maybe that and the bandshell and Tom Evans, and, you know, use downtown spaces for celebration of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Keith, you got enough?
Anybody have anything else on those three items?
Okay.
So Keith, if people from the general public are watching and saying, you guys haven't even come close, here are some other ideas, is there a way for people to submit their ideas?
Yeah, they can email me, keith.abraham@cityofames.org, or they could call 515-239-5349. So either way, and part of this process too is we'll go out and get some additional public input as well. with this once we start getting, more ideas and so on. Because obviously what the last thing we want to do is spend $3 million on something that nobody uses. Because it doesn't have the right amenities, or it's not in the right location, and so on. So we'll do more of that too, Tim, but they can contact me if they have other ideas. So the last question then is regards to location. And some of you have already touched on, the space across from City Hall. But Steve, do you want to just touch on with the reinvestment district in the application? You want to share anything about that? Because again, the space across the City Hall would expedite the application process because we already have that. But if it doesn't meet the vision and the goals of the council, then again, we might be behind the 8 ball, and do we need to look at a different location? So Steve, do you want to say anything about it?
I think that's right. I think next meeting, the mayor and I will be coming out. I'll give you a briefing on the possibility of some outside funding through a reinvestment district program from the state, piggyback on the development that may occur on Lincoln Way between Kellogg and Clark. But we have a very small window of opportunity to get an application in with some specifics in terms of concept and cost. So if we want to do that, and we'll talk about more in the next meeting, we'll have to hire a consultant very quickly. But even in that, even though we only have a month or two, I think we'll build in some public input sessions so the public will have a chance. You'll complicate it, take a little more time if we're going to talk about multiple locations and have a consultant have to do different options and concepts on multiple locations. So if we want to take advantage of that, I think it's good that we move ahead with a certain site. But it'll be up to the council. We'll talk more about that at the next meeting.
So one question that I have for council is, and I know some of you thought that or think that the space across from City Hall is a great location with it. Do you think it's too removed from Main Street? Because you have City Hall, you have the bank. How do you get people that are in city or on Main Street? How do you get them to this location? Because you are a block off. Any comments with that? I see some head nodding no, that you don't think it's too far off Main Street, but just curious if there's any other comments related to that.
It's really sad if that's too far off Main Street. And I know that it is too far off Main Street for some people, but this is a small downtown. There shouldn't be any reason that people couldn't find this space. And if it's a great space, people will seek it out.
Right. I was going to say they'll hear the squeals of joy from the people who are already at the plaza. Now, I get it that it's a block, but I think it's all really tied well together there already, even. But so.
Well, and the bus stop is right by City Hall there, so arguably people are seeing that parking lot before they see Main Street.
Right.
One thing to keep in mind too is that we have to think long term of what the downtown area is going to be like. So I think that there will be more development going on the west end of Main Street as time goes on, as the development happens along Lincoln Way. That's going to bring a ton of people to that space. And I think the fact that Fairway is right in that area too is another just sort of locating factor. So I think long term, I think this is going to be a great location.
Okay, I think you gave us a lot of input. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you much.
Any closing comments before we move on? Thanks, Keith, for leading us through the the conversation, and we'll look forward to moving this thing forward, as Amber said.
Get her done, right, Amber? All right, thanks, everybody.
All right, moving on to item number 34, water plant dehumidification project. as mentioned at the onset of the meeting. Item B under this was removed because actually staff has the authority, given the amount of money for the contract amount, to go ahead and award that without council action. So what we have tonight is a resolution approving plans, specifications for the project, and setting some bid dates and date of public hearings. Any questions for Mr. Dunn? He's available to answer those on these. All right, we'll open up public comment. Brian, is there anybody who's listening or watching that wants to address council on this particular topic?
Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, close public input, and hearing no questions, entertain a motion on resolution approving preliminary plans and specifications for the project, setting December 23rd, 2020 as the bid due date, and January 12th, 2021 as date of public hearing.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Rachel, I'm sorry, it was Amber, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Okay, item 35, hearing on changes to the East University impacted urban revitalization area. Any questions for Kelly on this particular topic? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing on the changes to the East Industrial impacted urban revitalization area. Anyone who is interested in discussing council on this particular topic, you're invited to do so. Brian?
Ellen Chestnut.
Good evening, Alan. If you want to introduce, state your name and address, and then you may open your comments.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Ellen Chestnut with Kappa Kappa Gamma 120 Lynn Avenue. We are just requesting a potential later date of an approval process than that January 1, 2021 to accommodate just the time of year and actions needed to get a new approval and a new recommended date could be around that March 31st area or time frame. Kappa Kappa Gamma has recently submitted and received an approval on a site plan for a demolition permit to rebuild our sorority at 120 Lynn. And after further proceeding with our approved site plan and the unforeseen increased costs due to just COVID and everything kind of that we're going through, we're now in the current price plan or the site plan priced out of our initial budget. And so therefore the sorority will need to resubmit and seek a new demolition permit. And we just don't believe with the timing of year and kind of coming down to the wire for that January 1 date that we'll be able to push anything through prior to January 1. So just requesting a later date of approval, potentially maybe end of March, if at all possible.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Anybody else, Brian?
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Kelly, do you wish to comment on Ellen's comments?
Other than we've been in contact with them and we know that they're going to be looking at changes and to us when we proposed this date, this was back in August when we first introduced this idea, and you asked us to do outreach to see who this may affect, and no one else has responded as being affected. And even Kappa Kappa Gamma didn't originally think they would be. Staff does not have an opinion if January 1st is essential. Delaying this for a couple of months to accommodate a party that we already thought we were accommodating doesn't seem like a significant change to us.
So Kelly, on the agenda, if council would so desire to change it from January 1, 2021 to, let's say, April 1 or May 1, whatever they would decide to do. Would that fall underneath item 35A?
So let me look at the agenda quick here.
Make sure we get the motion, or if council is desiring to make those changes.
Yeah, it's part of the resolution for amending the plan criteria.
Okay.
So it is 35A, yes.
Okay. All right, council discussion.
I think we've talked about Kappa Kappa Gamma, and you know, I don't see any reason to interrupt their plans due to, you know, the misfortune of being delayed. Would there be any other side effects of this in terms of other expected applications for demolition or anything along those lines that planning is aware of?
Since nobody contacted us, I'm still not thinking there's anybody else pursuing demolition and new construction anytime soon. So I would have thought somebody else, if they were interested, they would have reached out also, and they have not.
Makes sense. Thanks.
And you also per the staff report, you also contacted all 37 Greek houses as well too. So we take a very proactive seeking to make sure people are aware of what's going on, so no one got caught unawares, which has been very helpful, I think. All right, I'd entertain a motion on resolution amending plan criteria.
So what language do you need on that motion, John?
Resolution amending plan criteria and changing the date from January 1, 2021 to a different date. Is that correct, Kelly?
Yeah, I think it would be, I mean, it's the language, it's under alternative 1, but you would just change the date from January 1st, 2021 to a later date, such as April 1st, 2021.
So moving alternative 1 with the understanding that you would change that one date then would be added.
That would work for us. We would understand that.
So I would move alternative 1 with the date changed to April 1st, 2021.
Okay.
The second?
Second.
Tim seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Thornton.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance amending the East University impacted urban revitalization area boundary by adding 313 Lynn Avenue and adding an expiration date of April 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Brown,
Second.
Rachel, seconded. Roll call.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Thornton,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 36. Kelly, you want to highlight what we're talking about on this item?
Yeah, I think we identified quite a few small language changes that we think are going to help clarify how encroachments into setbacks are going to work. The main goal that I had for this was for single family homes to be able to give people more of an opportunity to improve the front of their home, especially properties that were non-conforming for front setbacks, to allow for porches and front decks, things that really you've seen a lot of people maybe in the last 5 years make an effort to improve their property that way. And there was some conflicts with zoning that we didn't really feel were necessary. They just weren't anticipated from the time period the zoning ordinance was written. On the commercial side, I think we have also clarified how certain exceptions work. We did have some interpretation issues in the past year for different sites, and we want to make this clearer so there aren't really discrepancies in interpretations going forward. This regards awnings, canopies, covered walkways, architectural features, and then signage as well. So we have it much more tied down now, and it's clear what the expectations are. So overall, we are trying to facilitate more allowances into required yards with the outcome of this proposal. And then in the commercial area, have a little more definition of what those allowances are.
Any questions for Kelly? All right, declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Brian, is there anybody who wants to address council on this particular topic?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, I declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on first passage of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Tim, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Moriarty.
Okay, thank you. Move on to item 37, ordinances. This will be the first passage of face covering ordinance extending sunset clause to June 30th, 2021. And this is the first passage, so I'm going to open up public comment after. Give council a chance to ask any questions of Mark or Mark offer any input. Any questions for Mark? Any input, Mark?
No, I just drafted what the council directed me to, and also the council directed the staff to check with various of the city's partners to see what their thoughts were on extending the expiration date of the ordinance, and that Deb Schildroff did that, and that's included in the packet.
And for those who didn't read it, what did they find? I mean, not that the council didn't read it, excuse me, anyone from the general public who may not have read it. I know.
I see Deb's on here, so.
Deb?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, there was overwhelming support from our partners in continuing the face covering ordinance. There were also some suggestions, particularly from the Board of Health representative, about considering adding some type of penalty language to help the enforcement of the face covering ordinance. But overall, in support and believing that it is helping to mitigate wider community spread and trying to keep everybody healthy, especially as we go into these winter months where a surge has been anticipated.
Yeah, would you mind just identifying what those 4 groups were that you contacted, just for the general public information?
Yep. Story County Board of Health, Iowa State University, McFarland Clinic, and Mary Greeley Medical Center.
Okay, I'm gonna open up public comment. Is there anyone, Brian, in the who would like to address council on this topic?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close public input. Entertain motion on first passage of face covering ordinance extending sunset clause to June 30th, 2021.
Move first.
Amber? And Rachel seconded. Thank you. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye. Sorry.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Nay.
Junk,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 38, entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4422 on proposed text amendments regarding the new floodplain maps, updated definitions, and amended terminology used in Chapter 9 of the Ames Municipal Code.
Move on third.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 39, entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4423, repealing the urban revitalization areas listed on the agenda.
Move on third.
Gloria?
Second.
Amber, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to disposition of communications to council. We have 5 items this evening. First item is a letter from Farmhouse Fraternity regarding request to pursue tax abatement 311 Ash Avenue.
Maybe Kelly can just give you a little briefing on this. You can decide.
Yeah, the request isn't really a policy change. They didn't apply timely to receive the full benefit of the tax abatement program that exists. So to take advantage of any of the remaining years, they do need special action by council, and that's what they're requesting. So if you're interested in this request, I believe you would just direct it to be put on a future agenda for city council to authorize them to apply for tax abatement. And if they do that, it would not be for the full 10 years that they could have been eligible for. It would only be for the remaining years.
Is there any interest in placing on a future agenda?
Sure, I move we place it on a future agenda.
Second.
All right, moved by Garten, seconded by Martin. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Second one is a memo from Historic Preservation Commission and Planning and Housing Department. Kelly?
So this is in response to the Historic Preservation Commission, correct?
Correct. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So the commission over the past year spent quite a bit of time looking through the preservation plan, and it's been summarized for you in this memo. And they're asking for the council to put this on a future agenda for considering these recommended changes. This is just part of the review that they did. It's something that the council could choose to put on a future agenda or delay to a future date if they want to.
Kelly and staff is in support of these.
Yeah, the staff is yeah, the changes staff doesn't have any concerns about. We support the changes.
Are the changes primarily just wording, or are there policy substantive changes?
I don't have the memo up right in front of me, Tim. For a lot of it, it was clarifying that almost 10 years have passed since it was first adopted, and times and situations might be slightly different, or things have happened. I don't think there's any significant policy changes, but I don't have it open in front of me.
Okay.
I would move that we put this on a future agenda.
Moved by seconded by Corey. And to your point, Tim, putting it on the agenda gives us a chance to ask more questions to the staff at that point. So, and those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I just want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission and Department of Planning and Housing. There's a lot of work that went into this. There's like 10 pages. 10 pages in this communication. A lot of effort, and just shows how people are really working hard on these commissions to help represent the city, the Ames community. All right, item 3 is an email from Rachel Brayfogle regarding a box receptacle to dispose of retired American flags. We do, Steve, you want to just comment on where we can and where we have access to? And
well, there is access already to the resource recovery free of charge. I think they're looking for a place along Main Street to place some type of container so people could dispose of flags. I'm not sure that's the best location. There might be some more convenient location someplace else, but
well, one question back is it seems like one of the things that's mentioned in this email is just the fact that I wasn't aware of, that there was the access to this, and maybe one option might be for council's consideration would be using city side to be more proactive in explaining where you can dispose of flags and or signage on the resource recovery plant, and or even at the Legion if they can't get in, that there's another alternative for disposing of flags. But
so I can give you a memo on it, or you could put on the agenda and deal with it or not.
Or just send a letter to the individual thanking her for her interest and just doing a better and sending more, making a more proactive communication via public the website or city side.
My hesitation is taking out, I mean, I think whenever we have anything that's in public space on the sidewalks, we have to be cognizant of people traversing. And so I sort of like the idea in principle. I appreciate the fact that these are some young ladies that are trying to do something positive for the community. I think that's to be commended. I'm not sure that that's the right location.
No, right.
I guess one of the concerns they had was that having the disposal of the flags at the resource recovery plant might make people think that the flags are actually being incinerated improperly. And so it's maybe sending the wrong message. So I would be interested in getting a memo from staff about whether there is an appropriate location for this. And if there isn't, then we could reject the request, thanking them very politely for their concern. So I would move we get a memo from staff on whether there's an appropriate place for this kind of receptacle.
Is there a second?
I second it. And I don't know, maybe, I don't want to spend a ton of staff time, but you know, if you can think of other communities that have this, I can't think of another community right now where I've seen something like this. So maybe if Kelly or Steve, you have an opportunity, just sort of ask a couple of friends where they put their, how communities dispose of their American flags. I don't think I've ever seen one of these, what they're talking about.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Next is a letter from Kevin Burke, President and CEO of the Ames Convention and Visitors Bureau.
I would suggest on this that this type of thing be handled at budget time. It's not that far away. It'd be the first week of February. You'll have to consider this with all the other requests you're going to get for the budget. You'll be briefed on the budget and all the available balances and make a decision at that time.
I would move we discuss this at budget time.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
And I'm going to support this, but Steve, is there anything that's from a timing perspective? So that's a few months away, but is there anything that perhaps Kevin needs more immediately?
You can have Kevin get on. I think he's here. I think it was to replenish a fund balance, which has been decimated by the downturn in the hotel industry. So I'm not sure it's for cash flow necessarily for the next 2 months. But I think Kevin was on. Make it off.
No, he is on, and we don't usually allow that. I think given the fact that it's Kevin, if you want to answer the question for council.
Yeah, our fiscal year actually goes through January and through December. And so we're in our budget cycle right now. And we are looking to this would be in support of our budget for 21. And it would be in conjunction with our own reserve. So it's not immediate. So during the regular city budget cycle would be fine.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. And we know this is a tough time for everyone in this industry. So appreciate your leadership.
And thanks for all you're doing. This is, like I said, there's a pretty big hit on the hotel and motels here.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, there's a motion made and seconded. You understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Last one, I believe, is Mark following up with council. And Mark, is there anything that you need from us or any recommendation in terms of moving forward with this, or is this under advisement only?
I think it's just under advisement. It's just informational.
Okay. Council, any questions for Mark on this one? All right, we'll move on. on to council comments. Thank you. Bronwyn, want to start off tonight?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
All right. Nicole, how about you?
Nothing for me.
Tim?
Well, I think we've got some graduating seniors. I just say thanks for making Ames your home. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Rachel?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
David?
Not me, thanks.
Gloria?
I'd just remind people what John Hall said at the beginning of the meeting. Please shop small, shop local, and take advantage of Small Business Saturday, which is occurring this Saturday to support your local small businesses. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Amber?
I just hope everybody has a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Okay. I do want to make one just general announcement, and that is every year the Human Relations Commission awards a humanitarian award to someone in the community who contributes to the extraordinary quality, especially efforts to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so if anyone in the community or council is aware of someone who you believe should be considered, we encourage you to go online to City of Ames website. That's www.cityofames.org, and that's /boards and commissions. And there's an application there you can fill out for someone who will be considered a nominee for the humanitarian award. So anyway. All right, well, I would echo what Gloria and Amber said. We wish everyone in our community a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. And we know it may not be the same as usual, but please be safe and look forward to seeing you after the holiday. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
All right. We are adjourned. Good night and have a very nice holiday. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.